on the first question of the speaking section that we started with yesterday. We're going to practice today, but we're also going to be talking about the way that they evaluate your responses, what you should be aiming for in your responses when you speak, in the content, in terms of the delivery and everything else. We're also going to analyze a couple of sample responses and then we'll practice. Okay, guys? So do you guys have any questions before we start? Okay, so yesterday we didn't have time to see the rubrics that the ETS uses to evaluate or to grade your responses, right? I'm going to talk about that today first. And I want to start by saying that you can find these TOEFL rubrics if you look them up. The first result that you get, that's the one. If you search TOEFL speaking rubric, then first thing that pops up, that's a PDF officially from the ETS website that basically explains how they evaluate your speaking section. Because remember that it's not multiple choice. It's not like there's a right or a wrong answer. So first of all, they're gonna score your responses on a scale from 0 to 30, as you may be expecting. It doesn't work like that. What they do is first, every single question, the 4 questions, are over 4. So you can get a score from 0 to 4. 0 is the minimum, 4 is the maximum you can get. And then they weight your scores. That means that if you have a 4, that equals to, let's say, from 24 to 30. If you have a 3, that means that you could get from 18 to 24. So depending on the level that you get here, that's gonna convert into your final score, right? They have an average. So let's say that the average is, in the 4 questions, you have an average of 4. That means that you're probably gonna get like a 28 or 29, right? If you have an average of 3.5, you're probably gonna get around 17, 18. So it depends on that. So you can always check it out. I'm gonna send you guys the link to this website where you can find the rubrics, but I will summarize it for you guys. I will tell you exactly what this says on my presentation. So basically, they are gonna be looking for 3 different things. They are gonna be evaluating 3 different aspects in your responses. We have topic development, which is basically what you say. This is the content of your response. Content. They also take a look at delivery, which is how you speak, your fluency. And they take a look at the language that you use, the grammar and the vocabulary. Okay, guys? So, Salma, please, could you maybe read what we have here for topic development, those 3 bullet points?
Task fulfillment, coherence, coincidence, and time. Support and development, details and examples, justification, connections and structure, connector progressions of ideas.
Okay, thanks so much, Salma. So basically that's common. What does this mean? Task fulfillment means that you actually answer the question. If they are asking you, do you prefer to run or to walk? But you start talking about something different and you don't actually answer, or maybe what you say doesn't make a lot of sense. You're like, well, most of the time I prefer to walk, but there are some times where I prefer running, and then you start going around, then that you're not actually answering the question, right? So your response needs to be coherent, it needs to make sense, it can be off topic, it needs to be concise, so you can repeat, you can be redundant, right? You can be like, I prefer to run because I think that you burn more calories. So I think that you save a lot of time by burning more calories in the same amount of time that you would do when you're walking. And burning calories is important, right? If you are repeating the same idea, you're not being concise. And obviously the way that you manage your time, you can't, let's say, use 30 seconds to just answer the question. You can be like, well, I honestly am not too sure about this question, but if I really had to choose, I would probably say that I think that I prefer to run instead of walk. right? What you just did was like 20 seconds for just expressing your opinion. So the way you manage your time matters as well. Okay, guys, that's task fulfillment. Then you have support and development, which basically means how layered your response is, how well elaborated it is. You say, I prefer to walk. Okay, good, but you need to elaborate on that. Why do you prefer to walk? Give me an example of what you're saying. Justify what you're saying, right? Give me details. What time do you walk? For how long do you walk, right? When did you start walking? I want those details, those examples, those explanations of why. So your response needs to be complete, elaborate. You can just say, I prefer to walk because that's the way it is. Now you have to elaborate your response. And obviously, you need to connect and structure your response in a good way. So if you're going to introduce an example, you need to use a correct transition. You need to say, for example, to give you an example. If you're going to introduce a contrasting idea, you need to have a contrasting transition. However, scenes. So using connectors, showing the flow of ideas, making sure that they are related, that you're not like starting to talk about running and then you talk about music, right? If they don't have anything to do with each other, then what's the point? So that is basically the content. That's what they want, right? They want your response to be logical, to be concise, to be on time, to be well supported, to be well connected and well structured. Okay, guys? Any questions so far? Now, of course, that they're also going to take a look at how you speak, because this is speaking at the end of the day. So it does matter how you speak, how fluent you are. Now, how do you guys demonstrate that you're fluent? How can you do that? Basically, you need to be careful with these two things. So, Natalia, please, do you mind reading what we have here for delivery, these 2 bullet points?
Okay, delivery, pronunciation, and intonation, stress, articulation, intelligibility, flow and speech, fluidity, pauses, filler words.
Okay, thanks so much, Natalia. So basically, delivery means how you deliver your response, how you speak, you know? Pronunciation doesn't mean that you can't have an accent. That's one mistake that many students make. They think that they can't have an accent. Everybody has an accent. I mean, there's no such thing as there is probably a standard like American accent, but it's not a standard English accent. And this is an English exam, right? So doesn't matter what type of accent you have. English is such like a spread language that there are so many accents, right? So many people from so many different places speak the language, have learned the language. So it's okay if you don't sound like a native speaker from one specific place, because even native speakers have different accents depending on where they're from. So it doesn't matter if you don't have if you don't sound like a native speaker. What matters here is that you are clear, you're easy to understand. So when you're speaking, the person who's listening to you guys should not have to make any effort in order to understand what you're saying. That is the purpose of learning a language, right? To be able to communicate ideas. So you need to be able to express yourself and to communicate without the other person making like a huge effort in order to understand what you're saying. That's the only thing that matters. If you pronounce the words in a way that they are understandable, everything's okay. But not only pronunciation, another thing that matters too is the way that you intonate the words. Because a fluent person, somebody that is already fluent in the language, is always going to be able to intonate the words and the sentences in a way that they are transmitting the message. So for example, when you have a negative sentence, you usually stress the negative, right? You're like, I never expected this to happen. So you're like stressing that sentence, right? It's not like the language is linear, like you're speaking, like reading something. You have to stress certain things. You obviously have to articulate the words correctly in order to be intelligible, in order for your delivery to be clear. And you need to try not to have such a linear response. I don't know why, but I think students sometimes get nervous and get afraid, and it looks like they're reading. So you don't do that. You speak like you would speaking to a friend, you know, intonating certain things. And flow and speech is related to the fluency that you have. If you guys make a lot of pauses, then that's a problem. But everybody makes pauses. I'm not telling you that you can have 1 second to think. Of course, you're gonna spend a few seconds thinking. There are gonna be some pauses when you speak. That's completely normal. But you can have such long pauses that you're wasting time there, right? That would be a problem. And using 2-minute filler words is also not a good idea. So like being like all the time, or using like the way that I just did. So many filler words is not a good idea. If you guys have or are getting used to using one specific filler word, try to get rid of it. Okay, guys, that's delivery. And finally, we get language use, which is related to vocabulary and grammar. So maybe, Franklin, can you please read what we have for language use? Are you there? Maybe,
Yes, teacher.
okay.
Okay. Vocabulary usage, appropriacy, and range. Grammar, correct grammar usage, and grammar variety.
Okay, thanks so much, Franklin. So basically that's it. It's the tools that you use to communicate. That is your vocabulary and your grammar. They need to go together. When I say vocabulary, I don't necessarily mean search for the most uncommon words so that you show that you have advanced vocabulary. You don't have to do that. You need to sound natural, so don't look for complicated words to use here. What you need to make sure that you do, though, is that the words that you're using are appropriate. What does that mean? Let's say that you're talking about relationships, or let's say that you're talking about, I don't know, you're talking about education, okay? And there's one question that is about assignments. So if you say, so students should never be able to present assignments after the time is over. So you're not using the appropriate vocabulary. You should say students should never be able to submit, to hand in assignments after the due date, for example, or after the deadline. So you need to know those words that are appropriate to the context. Words like deadline, assignments, attendance, professor. So you need to use the appropriate words according to the context of the question. If it's about work life, then you need to have those words, right? Colleagues, co-workers, working environment, promotions. You need those words that are related to the topic in order to have the correct vocabulary. And grammar is basically, of course, it means not to make too many grammar mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. So it's okay if you make 1 or 2, as long as you're not showing that you're struggling with one specific grammar point. Because let's say that you're never able to correctly conjugate your verbs. You're always like, so he say, he like, he do. So you're showing that you have a problem with conjugating in the third person. But if you just make 1 mistake, no problem. But if you're constantly making that same mistake, it means that you don't have that grammar yet. And grammar variety, which is, I think, what I was telling you yesterday when I was like, maybe you can use different tenses, maybe you can use a conditional sentence, maybe you can use the passive voice here and there. So showing that you have the knowledge of different grammar structures and you're not just sticking to the basic ones. Okay, guys? Basically, that's what they want. If you have all of these, then you can totally get a perfect score. It takes practice, but it's really important that you guys understand how they evaluate your responses so that you can evaluate yourselves when you're practicing. You can ask yourself, so am I being coherent? Am I connecting my ideas well? Am I intonating well? Am I using appropriate vocabulary? Is my grammar okay? Am I making too many pauses? Am I using too many filler words? Am I justifying my ideas correctly? You can ask yourself those questions in order to see what areas you need to work. Okay, guys? So that's it. That's how they are going to be evaluating your responses. I think it was important for me to mention this. But I don't know if you guys have any questions so far. Is everything okay? Everything clear? No questions? Okay, guys. So let's start practicing, shall we? But before we practice, let's listen to 2 sample responses and then we start practicing. Okay, guys, I just want you to hear these 2 sample responses. Now that you know how they evaluate your responses, then you're gonna be able to judge these responses that you hear, okay? So maybe, Geraldine, could you please read the question that we have on my screen?
Okay. Do you agree or disagree with the following sentence? Learning through online course is more efficient than early in the traditional classroom setting.
Okay. Although this is the one that we did, right? Let's listen to another sample response. Sorry. Okay. This one here, please. Maybe Jimena, could you read the question?
Yes. Do you agree or disagree with the following sentence? We can learn a lot from making mistakes.
Okay. So we're going to hear a sample response. This is a level 5 response. It's obviously going to be a perfect response, but believe me, you don't need to have a perfect response to have a top score or a perfect score. Okay. So I just want you to pay attention to the content mostly. We're going to analyze the content. I don't want you guys to be like freaking out on the delivery because obviously this person here pre-prepared his response. So he had no pauses, he had no filler words and everything. And that's not normal, you know, that's too prepared. But let's take a look at the content. That's what I want you guys to see.
I totally agree that we can learn a lot from making mistakes. First of all, we always remember how our past mistakes made us feel, and since they usually make us feel really terrible, we try to avoid repeating them so we don't feel that way again. We also take deliberate action to avoid it. For instance, last year before my big science midterm, I made the mistake of playing video games all day long. As a result, of course, I failed the test and I felt miserable. But I learned from that it's very important to study and to prepare for tests. So the next year, during exam season, I buckled down, I studied, and I learned a lot.
Okay, guys, so based on what we just talked about, what would you say of that response? Let's take a look at the transcript of the response so we can analyze it. First of all, the question was an agree or disagree type, right? Do you agree or disagree with the statement that we can learn a lot from making mistakes? So if we take a look at the transcript, this is what we just heard. First of all, we have the introduction, of course, and the introduction is exactly what we talked about, right? The person is answering the question using the same verb, agree, using an adverb, I totally agree, and repeating the statement. This is important, or at least part of the statement, right? I totally agree that we can learn from mistakes, let's say, right? The important thing is that you say something related to the statement. So we have the adverb, the verb, and the statement. The verb is the same as in the question. Then he has one reason. To be honest, something that I wouldn't do is use first of all. And I think we talked about this yesterday. It's better to say because, since, for, because if you say first of all, and then you don't have another second or third or also, then it sounds a little bit weird. It's like you wanted to say something else, but you ran out of time. So it's better to just say because we always remember, okay? But he has a good reason, you know, and his reason is connected. We remember how our mistakes made us feel, and since they usually make us feel really terrible, we try to avoid repeating them so we don't feel that way again. And I also want you guys to look at the vocabulary. Look at how he has different adjectives. Terrible, miserable. One way of quickly expanding your vocabulary is by learning a few synonyms for the most common adjectives. So try not to say good, bad, important, ugly, pretty, happy, sad. Okay, try to study synonyms for those words. So instead of saying mistakes make us feel bad, he says terrible, miserable. Instead of saying studying is good, you say studying is beneficial, favorable, advantageous. Instead of saying it's important, it's very important to study, it's essential to study, it's key, it's of paramount importance, it's, I don't know, detrimental to study. So look for some synonyms to the most common adjectives for vocabulary. Then he has his example. He says, for instance, last year before my big science midterm, I made a mistake of playing video games all day long. As a result, of course, I failed the test and I felt miserable. Nevertheless, I learned from that it's very important to study and prepare for tests. Thus, the next year, I buckled down, I studied and learned a lot. So look at how his example contains what we talked about. He has context, last year before my science midterm, with the specific details. Look at the details. I made the specific mistake of playing video games, another detail. He has good grammar, past tenses. He has good transitions as a result, nevertheless, that's, and the example is well connected to his reason and to the opinion, right? Because he says that mistakes make us feel bad. So he made this mistake of playing video games instead of studying. He failed the test, he felt miserable, and that's how he learned, right? Not to repeat it, not to feel that way again. So he learned from that experience and he didn't repeat it, right? Next year he did something different. So those are maybe some comments we can make. Okay, I just wanted you guys to see how it's a great response with one reason, one example, and everything we talked about yesterday. Okay, guys, do you have any questions about this so far? Okay, guys, we're not gonna listen to the next sample response. We will hear it tomorrow. But I want to start practicing already. So no questions ready before we start practicing? You guys are gonna start speaking now? Do you really not have any questions? Okay, well, in that case, let's start practicing. Let me see. Okay, guys. So we're going to start with this question right here. The question says, some students choose to take courses in a variety of subject areas in order to get a broad education. Others choose to focus on one single subject area. Which approach to course selection do you think is better for students and why? Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. You may start preparing now. Okay. So is there any volunteer? Anybody who would like to go first? No? Maybe, I don't know. Jimena, do you mind going first?
Okay, yes, I can try.
Okay, of course. So you can start speaking now.
I think no, first of all, the main option is focus on a single object, because this way students can achieve a better grade. Because if you take different weights, probably you can't have the enough time for them. And for this reason, I prefer for they start with um, uh, a subject.
Okay,
Okay.
much. It was a great try. Don't worry, it was your first try, and it was actually really good to be your first. So, some comments that I can make. First of all, careful with the way that you're starting your introduction. What you need to do is always take a look at the question. The question says, which approach to course selection do you think is better for students and why? So you need to answer using the same verb as directly as you can. In this case, you would need to say, I totally think it's better to take courses, or it's better to focus on a single subject area, right? So answer the question more directly. You were saying the main option is, but the question is not what the main option is, because there's no main option, right? You can say, I totally think that it's better to focus on a single subject area. And that way you're answering the question more directly in your introduction. Okay, that's one thing. Your reason was great, because this way students can get better grades as they dedicate their time to only one single subject area. Great reason, but don't forget to give an example. You were forgetting about the example, right? So tell me, for example, right now I am only taking classes that are related to my major. I'm only focusing on physics this month, and I am getting better grades than when I was focusing on taking more classes, when I was taking literature and history. Now that I'm only focusing on physics, I am better able to take, or I'm better able to learn and concentrate and dedicate all my time to this subject, and my grades are getting better, let's say, right? So you need to give that example about where it contains specific details. What maybe you can say how much you got in your last test, let's say. But don't forget to give examples, okay? And also at the end, if you're gonna go with a conclusion, instead of saying, for this reason, tell me this is why, or that is why. This is why I prefer to take or to focus on a single subject area. Okay? Is that okay? Do you have any questions now? Okay, guys, let's try another question. So our question here is very simple. It says, some students prefer to work on class assignments by themselves. Others believe it is better to work in a group. Which do you prefer? Explain why. Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Starting now. Okay. So anybody that wants to go next?
Okay, me.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I completely prefer working in a group because if you organize efficient, it's more easy to do the task. For example, in my university, I have a group with my friends that we always made the tasks together, and we divide, and because we know each other when anyone don't know about the topic, another can explain and help. And I think that teach your friends is also a good way to learn.
Okay, great. I love your response. Well done. So I like the structure personally. You had a great introduction. I prefer it's better, or I prefer to work on class assignments in a group. You had a great reason. You can divide the work depending on your peers' abilities, maybe, or how you know your classmates. And you had a great example as well. Maybe I would be a little bit more specific. You were talking about a task, but you can maybe give me more details. You know, what class was this? What assignment it was? What was it about? You can say the other day we were working on an assignment for our biology class. We needed to do this, right? Maybe be a bit more specific about those details. But your example was great. Yes, we know what everybody does better. And I like the fact that you had a second reason, but you left it for the end, right? Which was different. So great. The only thing that I would maybe do, careful with the comparatives, instead of more easy, say easier, and also more details in your exam. But I would say it's a great response. Well done. So let's go for another one. Okay. Our question here says, some people enjoy taking risks and trying new things. Others are not adventurous. They are cautious and prefer to avoid danger. Which behavior do you think is better? Explain why. Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, guys. So anyone that wants to go now? Does no one want to try? Maybe, I don't know. Franklin, maybe you could try.
Okay, teacher. Well, I think it's better taking risks and trying new things, since when you uh, take risks, I think it's better, a lot of better, and this is way to improve maybe your skills. I don't know. For example, when I take English class, for example, it was a risk because many people taught me about that it's difficult, but future life, it's about taking a risk about that, I think.
Okay, Franklin, all right. Thank you so much. Hold on. So you went over the time a little bit. You needed more time, but I think it was good. I think maybe your problem in this case was that you couldn't think of one idea, right? You thought about the idea later, but in the beginning you wasted some time just saying the opinion. Your idea was great, you know, developing skills is a great idea that you guys can use in more than just this question. But you need to go sooner to your reason. So you need to say, I totally think it's better to take risks and try new things since you're able to develop new skills, let's say in the journey. And then you give your example, right? So for example, last month I started taking piano classes, or last month I started taking English classes, as you said, whatever it is that you have as an example, but don't forget to start sooner with your research. Now, one tip that I'm going to share with you guys, and that I really recommend that you do, is that you create your own reason sheet. What is a reason sheet? A reason sheet is basically going to be a document where you guys are going to be writing down the reason that you think you could use for more than one question. So whenever you're practicing and you're coming up with ideas as you go, write them down and put them all together in one document. For example, this was my reason sheet. I wanted to show it to you guys. So I thought about these reasons, and I think that you can always use them for many questions, not just for one specific question. For example, saving time, something being faster, something being quicker is a very common reason. Saving money, saving energy. You can always talk about that. You can always talk about safety. For example, in this case, you could say, I think it's better to avoid taking risks because that can be risky for your health, let's say. You can always talk about productivity, concentrating better, having fewer distractions, not getting distracted, having more tools, having access to more information. And this is what Franklin was doing, right? About learning more. So for example, developing new skills was the reason that he was using. So that reason, you're going to use it for other questions as well. So developing skills, you can talk about what skills you're developing. You're developing leadership skills, organizational skills, problem-solving skills. Sharing ideas, exchanging opinions was something that was used for the previous question, right? When we were talking about doing assignments in a group. So sharing ideas, exchanging opinions, acquiring knowledge, stimulating our imagination, getting out of our comfort zone, right? So create a reason sheet of your own where you're going to start writing down the reasons that you think about that you could probably use for other questions as well. Okay, that's a great exercise for you not to run out of ideas when your test is happening. Because it's very common to get nervous and to forget about all the ideas. But if you start writing them down now, then you will be better equipped when you take the test. Okay, guys, so that's one tip that I can give you all. Is that okay? Do you have any questions about that or anything so far?
I have a question. If I end my answer in have some seconds, is a problem?
You have a few seconds. If you have 3 or 4, it's fine. If you have 10, go with a conclusion, right? If you have 10 seconds, tell me this is the main reason why I feel that it's better to take risks. If you have more than that, then it may be a problem. Maybe that means that you need to add another reason. So you need a second reason to fill out the time. So if you have 2 or 3 or 4 seconds, not a problem. But if you have more, you have to either go with a conclusion or a second reason. Any other question? Okay, let's do another one. The question here says, some people think that family members are the most important influence on young adults. Others believe that friends are the most important influence. Which do you agree with? Explain why. Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So maybe Noelia?
Okay. I strongly believe that family members are the most important influence on young adults because they are because you can spend more time with your family and taking the examples with experience that, for example, they have your parents. In my case, when I have to choose what I have to study, my friends always given me different reasons that why I have to choose this or that. But my family give me strongly reasons to I have to choose finance, for example.
Okay, great, perfect. So in terms of content, that was amazing. You had a great introduction where you directly answered the question. I strongly believe that family members are the most important influence. You had a great reason, very objective, very short as well. You spend more time with them, you're better able to take in their advice and their examples. And you had a great reason as well about choosing a career path, choosing your degree or your major. The only thing I would maybe tell you is to be careful with the grammar part when you're giving examples. So I think that this example was supposed to be in the past, right? So in my case, instead of when I had to choose a major, my friends were giving me or my friends gave me, right? Different advice. So careful with the verbs most, but everything else was fine. Just practicing or reviewing maybe the tenses. But overall, it was a great response. Well done. You guys, any questions so far? Let's see then. Okay, the question here says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Use details and examples to explain your answer. All children should be required to learn a second language in school. Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So maybe Geraldine?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Mm, Okay. I think I agree about agreeing with the following sentence. I should solve the very recurring learn a second language in school because in the children to learn um, more intelligent. Um, and they are learning more. Um,
Okay, Geraldine, thank you, not bad. Maybe what's something that I would try to do is maybe work on your grammar. I think that you're still struggling with the grammar part, and that's what's not enabling you to express your ideas better. Because you're struggling in putting the words together, connecting the words, using different expressions. So you need to work on your grammar. You need to work on the basis so that you can express yourself better. But it wasn't bad. There are some things we could do. For example, in your introduction, when you have agree or disagree, you can never say, I agree about the statement. You can use those words. You always have to say, I strongly agree or I strongly disagree that, and then you continue with the statement, only the statement. So I strongly agree that children should learn a second language in school, let's say. or I strongly disagree that children should be required to learn a second language. So that's one thing, you know, careful. You can't say agree about the statement or anything like that. So your introduction, then your reason, keep it short so that you don't make mistakes. You try not to like hesitate there. So since your reason was good, by learning a second language, children develop their intelligence, right? Or children stimulate their intellect. You can use that vocabulary. Stimulate their intellect. Or they become more intelligent is fine as well. But this is if you want to get some expressions. And don't forget the example, right? You guys need to give an example. So tell me, I am teaching, or I am, let's say I have a daughter, and in her school, they are teaching her English as a second language. Her native language is Spanish, and she's learning English. And ever since she's been in that school, ever since she's learning the language, I can see that, I don't know, she's becoming smarter in a few things. And maybe you can talk about, she has improved her math grades, let's say. I don't know, you can talk about different things, right? But the important thing is that it's connected to your reason. If you're saying that they become more intelligent, tell me that you have a child that's learning a second language in school and that is becoming smarter, right? How? Maybe they're improving in other areas of, in other subjects, I don't know, or maybe they are showing more creativity. I don't know, maybe they're more interested in learning and education. So careful, don't forget your example, careful with the introduction, and mostly work on your grammar. Try to practice, maybe, to be honest, what I would suggest is that you read and you hear as much content as you can. So read articles. To be honest, what I did when I was preparing was I would obviously answer the question first, and then you can search or look up whatever you have here online. So you're like, children should be required to learn a second language in school, right? You look that up, and you're gonna find many articles talking about this. You can even search for videos if you want to work on listening. If you want to work on reading, then you search some articles. So look at this. You click on the first one that appears, and you're gonna start developing ideas, and you're gonna start expanding your vocabulary, not only vocabulary, but your expressions, right? So this is what you were saying, benefits for the brain, right? And obviously you're not gonna go for the hardest ideas, but like, let's say math and English are related, let's say, right? I don't know, interpersonal benefits. So children, when children are exposed to a foreign language, they show greater empathy, let's say, right? They show greater empathy. That's something that maybe you can use. So it opens doors. That's another idea you can use. And you're expanding your vocabulary, right? Not only vocabulary, because you already know the word open and the word door, but maybe you haven't heard that expression. Skills, language skills open doors, right? Communicate with more people, new opportunities, globally connected world, globally connected economy, bilinguals. So those expressions, that vocabulary is gonna enable you to express yourself better. So try to do that. You can always listen to podcasts, watch videos, read articles about these topics. Remember that the topics are always the same, right? Education, work, technology. So you should have those expressions. Okay, guys? So those are some tips I can give. Is this okay so far? Do you have any questions? Okay, guys, great. So let's do another one. The question here says, some people think that children should be allowed to watch whatever television programs they choose. Others think that parents should exercise control over the television programs that their children watch. Which do you agree with? Explain why. Now you guys will have 15 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, so who wants to go this time? Who wants to be next? Does anyone want to go now? Nobody wants to try? You guys sure? So in this case, maybe some ideas. If you are going for the option that children should be allowed to watch whatever they want, maybe you can say that, I don't know, that way they learn about everything, right? It doesn't have to be true. You don't have to actually believe that. Maybe that's one idea you can use. Or maybe that they feel more in control with themselves. But I think the easiest option would be to say that parents should exercise control, and you can say that maybe there are a couple of television programs that are not appropriate for children. You can talk about violence, violent programs, or I don't know, TV shows that display maybe an educational content. I don't know, violence. I would maybe go for that, right? So you can say, I totally agree that parents should exercise control over the television programs that their children watch. Since there are so many television programs nowadays that show or display inappropriate content for children. And then you give an example, right? For example, I have a niece who's allowed to watch whatever she wants. And unfortunately, lately, I've noticed that she's experiencing changes in her behavior. She has become more aggressive and more violent due to the programs that she's watching. She usually watches this, and you make up a name of a TV show, right? She watches a TV program that's about police officers, let's say. I don't know, you can make up a name as well, Guns in New York. So that's one option, that's one way you could do it. You can always go for the other one as well, right? I believe that it's better to leave children choose what they want to watch, since that way children learn to differentiate between right and wrong, and they feel more in control. And then you give the same example, but you change it, right? I have a niece who's allowed to watch whatever she wants, and she has learned to differentiate right from wrong. So whenever a TV show appears that contains violence, she alone, I don't know, changes the channel. However, she likes to watch educational programs or cartoons. So you can always go for both, and at the same time use the same reason, same example. Okay, guys? We are going to continue practicing. Don't worry about that. I want to see at least, let's say, 5 or 10 questions per topic, so we need to still see other topics. We have mostly focused on as student life. We're going to continue practicing tomorrow. I'm going to continue giving you some other tips. But what do you think so far? Do you have any questions at all about what we did today, or the practice session today?
Miss, where can I find this type of questions of speaking to practice?
Okay, good question. You can always practice using Mangush, the platform that I share with you guys. But if you want more, there's this website, bettertofelscores.com. I'm sending you guys a link. And I think you have like 90 different questions here. So you can check them out, think of ideas, read about these topics so that you expand your vocabulary. You can try answering the questions, evaluating your responses. It's a really good site.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other question before we go? Okay, guys, so please, before you go, today we actually have to do 2 surveys, 2 polls. I am sending you guys the first one now, and as soon as you are all done with the first, I will send the other one as well. Okay, guys, so if you could please fill it out before you go. There's one more, so don't go yet though. Okay. Okay, guys, now I'm sending you the other one as well. And after you're done with that one, then you can go. I will be seeing you all in tomorrow's class. We'll continue practicing. We'll continue seeing other sample responses as well. Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank
Thank
you. See you tomorrow.